merger of Canada and the United States.
That wasn't where I was going.
When President Donald Trump stood across from Prime Minister Mark Carney in the Oval Office and again suggested that Canada should merge with the United States, the world held its breath. What began months ago as a string of provocative remarks about turning Canada into America's 51st state had now escalated into a full-blown diplomatic test of will. The tension in that room wasn't just political, it was historical. Trump, the master of pressure politics, believed he could twist a long-standing alliance into something resembling subordination. But across the table sat Mark Carney, a man carrying not just the weight of trade negotiations, but the pride of a nation under siege. And in that moment, Canada's Prime Minister did something that echoed far beyond North America. He stood firm. His stance, his tone, and his refusal to yield resonated across continents. In Africa, in Asia, in every corner of the world, where nations have fought to remain independent against greater powers, Carney's defiance spoke volumes. It was a message that nations may be unequal in size, but not in dignity. Before diving deeper into how this meeting reshaped global diplomacy, make sure to subscribe to the African Web, where we analyze the defining struggles for sovereignty, power, and leadership across the world. In the months leading up to the meeting, tensions between the US and Canada had already reached boiling point. Tariffs on Canadian steel, lumber, autos, and aluminum had tightened Washington's grip, creating economic turbulence north of the border. The upcoming review of the USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, loomed like a sword over every conversation. But Trump went further. He pushed boundaries that no US president had dared to cross in decades. When he called the Canada-US border an artificial line and floated the idea that the two nations could operate better as one, it wasn't diplomacy. It was dominance disguised as negotiation. Carney, however, understood the deeper danger. This wasn't merely about tariffs or trade percentages. It was about rewriting the power dynamic between two sovereign states. Trump's proposal carried a message: submit and prosper. But Carney's silence at first, followed by his measured, unwavering response, flipped that narrative on its head. Canada, he told reporters later, was built by those who refused to be ruled.
If I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale.
That one sentence changed the tone entirely. Following the meeting, the United States didn't retract its tariffs, but the White House's tone softened. Trump praised Carney as a world-class leader and claimed the discussions were positive. Yet beneath the smiles, both sides knew this was more than economics. It was a struggle for control. Carney had walked into Washington's pressure chamber and walked out without bending. In Canada, Trump's rhetoric had done something that politicians rarely manage. It united an entire nation. Polls showed that nearly 80% of Canadians rejected any idea of annexation, even if it promised economic gains or US citizenship. That defiance wasn't confined to the political elite. It came from ordinary Canadians, farmers, students, business owners, and workers, all echoing the same sentiment: Canada is not for sale. This groundswell of unity gave Carney the mandate he needed. He entered the Oval Office not as a desperate negotiator, but as a leader backed by his people's pride. Opposition parties that had previously accused him of being too soft now stood behind him, realizing the stakes were far higher than policy. They were existential. Every headline, every news cycle in Canada demanded one thing: stand firm. And Carney delivered exactly that. He rejected the idea of Canada being spoken of as a 51st state, telling Trump directly that sovereignty was not a bargaining chip. That moment, subtle yet seismic, became symbolic of something far larger: a leader under immense pressure who refused to let his country be diminished. His composure transformed tension into triumph. While the meeting did not produce sweeping breakthroughs, it shifted the balance of respect. Trump's merge idea, once treated as bluster, now faced open rejection, not only by Canadians, but by global leaders watching closely. In public, Trump downplayed the tension, calling the talks productive and friendly. But the reality was unmistakable. Carney had drawn a line that the U.S. could not easily cross. Diplomatically, Carney secured recognition that future negotiations must happen between equals. That phrase, now echoed in official statements, marked a subtle yet powerful shift in tone. Trump may not have dropped the tariffs yet, but the optics told their own story. The smaller nation stood its ground. Analysts across Europe and Africa drew parallels between Carney's stand and the resilience of nations that had long resisted external domination. Still, challenges remain. Washington continues to leverage trade as a tool of control, and U.S. tariffs remain a thorn in Canada's economy. Carney's next test lies in translating symbolic defiance into practical relief for industries suffering under pressure. Can he maintain the same resolve when negotiations turn from identity to economics? That question will define the next chapter of his leadership. This confrontation was never just about trade deals or economic leverage. It was about sovereignty. It was about whether a smaller nation could hold its dignity in the face of overwhelming power. Trump's flirtation with merging Canada wasn't merely an offhand comment. It was a mirror reflecting a global truth that power, when unchecked, often seeks to consume. But Carney's defiance ensured that the story did not end in submission. His words, his posture, and his restraint became a statement that Canada would never be reduced to a subordinate. In a world where smaller nations are constantly pressured by powerful ones, his stand served as a reminder that independence, once won, must be defended every single day. Canada's moment in the Oval Office may have played out thousands of miles away from other regions of tension, yet its message resonated universally. From Europe to Asia, from Latin America to the Pacific, nations that have long faced economic or political pressure from global powers saw in Carney's stance a reflection of their own struggle, the eternal fight to protect sovereignty against influence. His calm defiance spoke to every leader who has had to choose between compromise and conviction. It is rare in modern diplomacy for one conversation to symbolize such a timeless truth, that the true strength of a country lies not in its population, military, or GDP, but in its refusal to bow when its principles are tested. Carney's firmness reminded the world that a nation's worth cannot be measured by how much it trades, but by how fiercely it guards its freedom and its dignity. So as the world watches the next phase of U.S.-Canada relations unfold, one question remains. Will Carney's courage set a new standard for how leaders defend their countries against pressure? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the African Web, where stories of defiance, pride, and power redefine what it means to lead in a world still ruled by giants.